Hey friends, welcome back to a new episode of openBIMvoice. Today I have with me my good openBIM friend Thomas Zwielehner. I hope I remember to pronounce correctly your name or close to that. Thank you for joining me, Thomas. It's really nice to have you with me. How is going on?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Um, yeah, I mean, we talked um, back in a while about openBIM, and since then, yeah, a lot of things happened. New projects, new people that I met, new ideas that came up in the projects. Um, yeah, I think in the meanwhile, I completely switched the industry from when we talked back then.
I saw you change your role, but please go deep and tell me more.
Yeah, I think the last time we talked, I was more in architectural modeling. I'm a trained architect, and that's where I naturally came from. Um, and a bit over 2 years ago, I switched sides, let's say. So I'm now working mainly for a construction company, railway construction company. And yeah, so the type of project changed, the project organization I work on, that changed, and it's yeah,
Completely
same,
different, like from what you say. Like,
very different, but in a way the same problems, just on a much larger scale. So it's if you have a small building,
yeah.
let's say small office building, now it's yeah, building infrastructure on a much larger scale. But that's just where, um, yeah, the potential of BIM and also the sometimes the disadvantages of BIM, they just multiply.
Yeah, yeah. That's very interesting. Okay, so you are with a construction company now, so you are helping them build projects. Are you working on a specific project, or do you work in the headquarters and you support the entire strategy of the company, or what exactly do you do in your role?
I mainly support two large projects in Germany, and I work in the BIM team there. So it's a cross company,
Hmm.
yeah, BIM team. It's an alliance um, model, contract model that we work on here. So it's very collaborative, with experts from different companies work together in very
Hmm.
focused teams. So that's a very good exchange of knowledge.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds interesting. And like you mentioned, yeah, it's definitely a lot to learn from interacting with so many different stakeholders. Yeah, very cool stuff. How, like you mentioned, you said BIM. Let's switch now to openBIM. Does openBIM play any role in the current projects that you work in?
Yes, definitely. So it's all the projects are mainly based on open standards. So IFC is the deliverable of choice. We work with ideas in some projects, but mainly, yes, with 3D models from many different authoring tools. So everything comes together with IFC in a way.
Okay, that's good to know. I guess this is not your company's initiative. It's something because that's what the client requires, right? The beneficiary asks for openBIM requirements. Do they ask for IFC models for handover, right?
Um, Not always.
Mhm.
I'm not sure if you're into these alliance models, contract models. Basically, this project organization, they decide what's best for them.
Mm.
So even if the client does not necessarily order a model, still all the contract partners, they can decide, well, for us, we believe that this is the best way to deliver the projects. So they can together decide how they want the project to be delivered, in addition to what
The client
the
asks for.
client asks.
Mm-hmm.
So they can say, well, we deliver more because we work in a certain way because we think we know that this is the best way to make a project work in the end.
Okay, that's interesting. And I guess like going for openBIM and embracing openBIM in kind of this kind of alliances, um, it would um, it would happen only because maybe some people have been exposed to openBIM, because otherwise no one is just going to say, hey, let's just do openBIM and deliver everything on IFC. But that's really good to know. Can you share with us a few use cases that you see that these models are used for on top of like the last part where they are delivered to the client? What use cases do you see for IFC models in your from where you stand?
I think the first and main use case is always the coordination to put all these models together and see if there are conflicts, if we have different views on the project. So if there's a collision, then there's a different perspective of what the project should look like.
Mhm.
So that's the first thing. If I have two 3D models, I can put them into a federated model and see if they play out well together. The second is always about costs. So once I have a 3D model, once I have a BIM data model sometimes, then I can push a button, the magic button, and the system tells me how much this project is. It's not that easy. It's not the push of a button, but still we can validate our assumptions that are made in a traditional way. So someone said, well, we have this many kilometers of rails. Now we have the model. We can always cross-check if our assumptions are still valid. So it's more a validation and not a magic button that tells us how much the project will be. So it's also, to see both sides. The third is the scheduling timetable, and that's actually where lean comes into play in a lot of projects right now. So this lean approach of organizing work, that's that we see that quite often at the moment, and BIM can actually be linked to this lean idea quite well if it's organized well.
Okay, I see, I see. Very interesting mentioning there. So you mentioned costing and scheduling. Um, are we talking about using this? Do you have like do you like is this information put actually in IFC models, like according like how it supports this kind of dimensions, or is this you are just using the, let's say, the quantity takeoff and then you connect it to something externally, maybe a
Yeah,
database, or that that's the level that is being used, right? Is not the
yeah.
information added like for 4D and costing yet.
No, it's quantity takeoff
Yeah,
from
and
the
then
model
connected.
and then connected. Yes.
Okay, okay, I see, I see. That makes sense. It's still, in order to do that, you still need good quality models. I mean, like good classifications, good materials or whatever, right? Good quantities. Because if not, then you kind of are in trouble, right? And how do you experience how is the quality of the data in these models?
Yeah, we experienced that we need more and more data in our models for each element. element. And recently that put a lot of pressure, a lot of work onto the modelers.
On designers,
because they're kind of the bottleneck. They are the ones who have to put all this data that is collected in the project onto this elements. And we thought a lot of about this. It's it's slowing things down. And in the latest project, we're trying a new approach here. So we looked through all our properties that we need, like the level of information need. We scanned all these requirements, and then we said, for each element, for each property, do we really need this in our authoring tool? Or is this just something that we need to add later? So we looked for all these, and we found out that about 80% of all the properties that we finally need in our model, we don't actually need them in our authoring tools. We don't need them in Revit or in Civil 3D or Pro V. It's just something that we add later. It's an enrichment. So we took all those and we put it into a database. So we now have our BIM model. We get all our IDs, our main properties from there. We sync them to the database and we enrich our elements in the database. So that gives us a lot of flexibility because we can now integrate people into the BIM process who don't really work with 3D models. We're not used to work with 3D models, work in spreadsheets, in forms, whatever. But we can always make sure that they are compatible to our model. So at any given time, we can push this now really magic button and push all the information that we want in our IFC back into this file using IFC OpenShell in this case.
Yeah.
So we have really slimmed down the work for the modelers. They don't have to add so many data. We have a browser-based way to enter information. So we can bring a lot of other people into this workflow.
And contribute to enriching the models. Yeah.
Right. And we have a live feedback. So I really like IDS and stuff, but it's always taking so long from the entry to the feedback. So in the old way. So if I tell a modeler to enter data, then it's exported, then it's checked, then we get the report back. That can take from a few days to a few weeks. In
if you don't have an agreement for them to use IDS themselves, I completely agree. That's just a waste of a lot of time. And it's something, unfortunately, I don't want to insult anyone, but something that the designers prefer to do. They like that. They is there within their comfort zone. And I think that's wrong. They should be the ones running the IDSs that get from the clients, and they should act on that, on the feedback they get from the IDS. That's the efficient workflow. You cut out a lot of unnecessary communication. I've experienced the same, but unfortunately the formalities on projects, and I think this is extremely important, how the premises for the projects are set, and make it clear, like, why not do something that is so much more advantages for saving money on a project, for a budget, right? I think the problem is, as long as the consultants are going to be incentivized by selling hours, they are not going to have this willingness to change that, because that just helps them to bill more hours. And this one, just like if they get IDS and all they have, like, they can use free tools and everything, they can get instant feedback and know what they have to fix. And like I think this is up to the general contractors or the client to impose these kind of things. Like I'm giving you all the tools that you need. You have to give me the proper information without these loops that are so unnecessary slow, which I've been exposed a lot to. Yeah,
Yeah.
so you're right about that. Like if we use IDS in that way, it doesn't make the impact that it's supposed to make. Yes, it makes it because it highlights, it surfaces everything that is wrong in a model, but it's like that it's not impacting the timeline. And if you want to do that we have to do it at the source. That's my humble opinion on that, at
Yeah.
least.
Yeah. So with this browser-based approach, we have instant feedback. So we can, in the backend, we can define these rules that are basically IDS compatible
Mm-hmm.
and enforce it right during the data entry. So if someone puts in his data for an element, we can help them.
Yeah.
So
They
we
get
can
guidance
enforce a
on how to
date
do,
a
like
date
what's
picker.
wrong and what they are supposed to do. Yeah, but
Yeah.
again, like you solve this, the biggest takeaway from this is not that the platform itself, which is very innovative and I love the idea, but is the fact that you took responsibility for that instead of waiting for the designer to do it. So
Yeah.
that's unfortunately it's sad that this is has to like this is the solution, but we got to do what we got to do to keep the projects in budget and so on. And like that sounds like it sounds unrealistic to me, but I know I heard about and I've seen other similar solutions, and for sure, like tell me more, tell me as much as you can, as much as you are allowed to share, because I love it.
Yeah. No, it's okay. Um, so we want to bring, as I said, this whole loop, this is process is so
Mhm.
so slow, so manual that it's yeah we had to fix this. So what we essentially have now is a way to validate the data during entry. So if I have this, let's say, raw IFC import, then I can start to enrich it, to classify it. So we have our own classification system, and if we assign a class to an element, then basically a form pops up and says, well, if this is a sleeper, then we have to enter these properties. So it's really dynamic, interactive. And for each property, we can define an editor type. So if we want a number, then you only can enter a number because the browser, the interface tells you you can't enter anything else. We can define downs. We can define a date picker. So we can really make sure that the data is at least valid in terms of the data type. But we can also go some steps further and say, well, you're not allowed to enter a date that is in the future. So we can really fine tune the way
Yeah.
the data is entered, and we can bring it to the person who knows best.
Wow.
Because let's be honest, the modelers, they have the special trait. They're very into this digital way. They're very,
They are used to
office
this kind of
based,
workflows. Yeah.
and they are not always the persons who know what's going on site or during a
Sure.
design process. So we have to bring the data entry to the person who knows best, to make it fast and to
Mm-hmm.
make it reliable, and to
Mm-hmm.
know if someone puts it in and you know that's a knowledgeable person, then it's you trust this data. If you know that's someone in the back office got a list and they entered it manually, then you know, well, probably that's late, it's error prone, and you don't really trust that data so much.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yeah, but it's all about speed. It's about instant feedback, and yeah, accessibility to all persons right away in real time.
Yeah, that's amazing. Actually, it's like the central database that we need. Every project needs. It's extremely nice to hear that you are building this. I guess there are definitely challenges along that, but um, I'm wondering how like are you using any classical BIM tool for this, or you build a custom tool using different tools? And I guess like IFC OpenShell for sure has a role there, or something to that. But yeah, what can you tell me about this? Because I'm curious, like how do you handle, for example, yeah, like can you rely on something like that, or you and your company prefer to choose to build your own tool to just control everything?
No, we basically it's just normal web technology. So it's a database and it's a front end server, and that's it, like in a nutshell. But in the backend, you have to organize the data in a certain way,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where all this yeah, open BIM and IFC schema comes into play.
Mm-hmm.
So um, IFC is the base of this all. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's not a step file. It's not saved in this way, but it's organized in that way, so we can easily get IFCs in and
Yeah.
IFCs out. So that's
So it both
the
it
other way
goes
around.
both ways. You have
Both
the system works bi-directional.
both ways. Yeah, we skip the geometry because everyone's working on 3D views recently. That's important, but unnecessary
Is not what you
sometimes.
needed. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so then like do you ever connect back the data with the geometry, or you just use only the data? For the like let's say for the output IFCs that you get, the IFCs that you get out from your database, is there any time any need to combine with the geometry IFCs, or you just keep it always separated? You just use the data.
Um, Both.
Mm.
So we can link them live at any time because yeah, we have some plugins for Blender, for example, for DSite, Solibri, um, that are basically just exchanging the selection of IDs. So if I
Uh-huh.
click something on the web, then something is highlighted in my viewer. So
Uh-huh.
someone else is taking care of the viewer.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't care basically what view they use. Um, so all this geometry processing, we skip that.
Mm-hmm.
We just listen basically to what the viewer says. So if it says, well, these elements, they are clicked, then we can process
Yeah.
this selection.
Okay.
That's one part. So it's live. We ignore it, but we can link them loosely. And the second part is at any time we can combine them again. With IFC OpenShell, I can say, well, which IDs are in my model, get all these IDs with their properties from the database and push them back, these property sets, into my model. And then if the geometry didn't change, I have the newest version of my IFC
Mm-hmm.
step file or
Yeah.
whatever. So this property enrichment or manipulation is probably the easiest part of editing an IFC model.
Yeah,
So
I agree. I agree. Wow, that's really, it's really, I really love everything. I'm just like my brain is exploding and thinking and ideating, and very cool to hear something like this. I also think like once you have that database, actually you don't like to make decisions, you don't have to get it to IFC. You just have the database and you can take decisions based on that, right? You
right.
maybe you like when maybe for handover you need to provide maybe the IFCs with all the data or something like that, but most of the time you can just do a lot with that, right? So you
Yeah,
have
all
it like one database, right? Like one big database, because that's what you want. That's like I still find very difficult when dealing with IFC, handling multiple files. This is a big bottleneck, which adds a lot of friction, a lot of extra work, unnecessary
yeah,
work. So if you find that, like if you get that, that kind of be the holy grail, because yeah, if it's performant enough, so that when you take out information or when you are looking for information, you get what you need. Like, do you use like a normal, like a relational or whatever, like traditional database, or it's
yeah.
something like newer, like vector database or something like that?
No.
No?
Just traditional
Okay.
SQL databases, relational
Hmm.
databases. Um, they are well enough, and we don't need something as fuzzy as all these vector databases.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that was the big shift in my history, my career, because in architecture, in these projects, we had not so many models. So we had 5, maybe 10. Um, but it was fine to work with them manually. Now in infrastructure, we have hundreds of models,
Yeah.
like really, I think more than 500 on one project. And if you have to edit attributes or properties there, that is really, really cumbersome. So if you have to open each Revit model, add a parameter there, edit the data there, export it, check it, um, that's really a lot of work, a
Hmm.
lot of stupid work. And there can happen so many errors.
Yeah.
And in fact, if we had a database for this, it's just you could do this in half an hour probably. Add new properties,
Hmm.
define new properties, add
Check.
them,
And
check
so on. Yeah.
them. So it's basically it's so much faster, um, and that was the way the reason why we enforced
Mhm.
this database approach. And you mentioned handover. Um, I think it's a bit a misconception sometimes how handovers work with IFC. So we in the BIM world, we tend to believe that we put everything in the model and the client takes the model and is happy with it. And um, very often we see what they do with the IFC model is they take it, they run a script, and they generate a table, spreadsheet that they import into their ERP system. So
Yeah.
basically, for some projects, we generated a spreadsheet, we filled it out, we used Dynamo to push it into Revit, we exported to IFC, we tested it. We made this whole loop over and over again.
Hmm.
We handed it over to the customer, and they basically extracted the same spreadsheet that we put in the beginning, because they needed this spreadsheet
Yeah.
to import into their ERP system. So that's, I mean, in terms of data handling, this is stupid.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a
We
waste.
could
It's
have given
like
them the
directly the tables they
spreadsheets
needed,
in the
the
very beginning.
information they needed. Yeah.
Yeah. So with this database, it's much easier to tell them, well, at any given time, you have to give us the specifications of your, let's say,
Exactly.
export or
What you need,
import.
and you get the lists.
Yeah, and then you push a button, you can you get an API access, whatever, and you can like fetch your list every day to check
Hmm. Hmm.
if
Hmm.
it's complete, if it's the correct form,
Yeah.
and not at the end from a highly yeah, a rigid, well structured but rigid text file like IFC is
Hmm.
for 500 plus models. So
Yeah.
you get one long list every day if you want, and can test the import into your system. So it's easier for entering data, checking data, making them valid, making them live, and retrieving them. And
So yeah,
the geometry is optional for this.
Yeah. That's very interesting. There is still value in having the IFC models, especially like the geometry and maybe with some data, but not. I really like this separation of concepts, not making the models so heavy. Just use them for what they are intended, for what they can bring the most value for, and then do that. But can't we like theoretically right now, can't we cut out completely IFC out from this conversation if the database approach can work so well? Why do we still need IFC models? Just for the geometry and for the little information?
We need it for geometry, and we need it for a shared schema. So
Okay, to have the same language, so we agree
yes,
on how
yes.
okay, I understand. Makes sense. Yeah,
So, and for long-term archiving, I think it's still
the best. Yeah.
very, very, yeah, the best solution that I know, because it's very self-contained, it's self-explanatory, and even if you forget how IFC works, and you open a text file named IFC in 100 years, you can still reconstruct that quite easily.
Makes sense.
That's what
Makes
you
sense.
can't do with a proprietary file or with a database. So for that, it's still very, very useful.
I understand. Like this sounds like science fiction. I guess to most people listening and watching this is going to sound like we live in a parallel universe. I know other people who use kind of similar approach, but I'm trying to grasp something. To do this, like either you are the best hacker that goes underground and does this on its own, or you have really strong backup from the leadership in your company. And this is not something that a freak is doing, but something that the people believe that it's a system to invest in. Tell me, what can you tell me about that? Like, is this something that the strategy of your company, like they really see the value of data and the value of this to back up of this, or is this like something that only some BIM nerds are doing without like complete supervision and backing from the leadership?
I think there are a few things to come together here. One is that these alliance projects they give us a lot of freedom to choose the best tools to deliver the job. So if we decide, and that have been a lot of discussions even in this
Format,
little expert group for BIM that we work in here. So even there, it's very, very hard, and had to discuss a lot to really use a new approach, because everyone is used to work the same way.
For
We
sure.
can even talk about a traditional BIM workflow already. Everyone believes, well, we have to edit in Revit, and we have to export it every 2 weeks, and then we have the BIM coordinator who checks it, and the BIM manager who checks it. We write BCFs, we write it back into our Revit, and this just goes on every 2 to 4 weeks. So we already believe that this is the best way to do it. So this change that already also took months into in this experts group. But I mean, we experienced the same bottlenecks
All the time. Yeah.
So everyone knows where it takes a lot of time, where it takes a lot of manual work to to deliver something that's a straightforward. Like you enter something and it tells us it's right. That's the way it should be, and that I enter some data, and weeks later someone tells me that it was wrong. So I don't know what I thought at that given time. There happens so much stuff in between until I get into this way of thinking again. Why did I enter this or that value? There's so much time that passes, and I'm distracted again from what I actually wanted to do at that future time. So that's we experienced the same problems. We just didn't try something new to solve this.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Do you think this is going to be difficult to scale for the entire company, for other projects as well? Now you are building kind of like a success story, like an approach that works finally, and we stop complaining about this, because this is like, it sounds like the best approach, possible approach. What about that? Like, do you see that this is something it should be emulated? And also, how do we, like, because I think the use case for a client, maybe they could also use a database like this, but in a different way, and different stakeholders as well. Maybe a designing team could also use it, and also other general contractors, right? How do we spread this? Like, how do we, like, do you think is this very difficult, or how possible is this to be emulated by other people after touching the aspect inside your own company?
The system is designed to be scalable, so it's could be used for multiple projects, multiple clients with different specifications. So that's actually another bottleneck to define the level of information need for each and every project and every client again and again. Well, still, we need to maintain our own standards.
Yeah.
I mean, we have the problem of enforcing both. And for most other BIM projects that I know, there's one standard. So you discuss a lot in the beginning about how do we call things, what properties do we use, how are they typed, how are they named, when do we need them, and each participant has their own way of naming things, classifying things.
If they don't use standards, that's why we have to use standards.
Yes, but the problem with standards is we have so many now. There's a nice cartoon for this. So we have 14 standards. We need to make one standard for all. So we make a new standard, and then we have 15 standards, not one standard. And all the companies that I know that have already put a lot of work into their standards, their BIM standards, and they won't change that because it works for them.
Yeah.
So we don't have to discuss and create one
global universal
one fits all standards.
No.
But we have to deal with the fact that we have just like we have multiple languages, we have multiple standards. We just have to map them. We have to make sure that at least the data is consistent and let everyone use their standards because it works for them. So instead of putting a lot of work into this consolidation phase, we just say, well, we have a project standard and you can add your own standard if you want. If you don't have one, you don't need it, but you can actually add your own standard into this database and enforce it on the elements. So we can add multiple classification systems.
Yeah, for sure.
We can add multiple, let's say, IDS configurations. So for my use case internally, I can check specification 1, and the other one is for the client, specification 2.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have to, but that's the idea. We don't have to show everyone what information we actually have on these elements.
Mm-hmm.
So privacy is really a deal breaker sometimes for open standards and open files.
Mm-hmm.
Not everyone wants to share their cost data in an IFC file. So we have already some separate system. We have sometimes comments on elements that we don't want to share, but we have to make them linked to the elements. So this database gives us the freedom for everyone to add as much information as they want, while having the
separated
the option to make them like private and say, well, this is just for internal use, but we can use some information that is shared across the whole team. So that's the power of databases here. So we can really fine tune the permission, who sees what, who can edit what, down to the last property value.
Yeah.
In a text file, I can't do this.
Yeah.
I always have to separate it in different text files and give access to one file or don't.
Yeah, makes sense. Like, how complex is to build a system like this? Like, do you need a big team of developers, or it's like few people using ChatGPT and Claude can come up with something like basic, at least to get going, or do you need really IT experts to set this up?
I don't think that AI coding tools alone will bring you all the way, because there's so much in security, in data structure, in domain knowledge that you have to add. I mean, you have to start with a schema in the beginning. So you have to design it from the very beginning, or you can choose existing schemas, existing architecture. So all these design decisions, you can't really delegate it to ChatGPT and say, well, I need something like this, do it. Yeah, it's not that easy. So
No.
there are a lot of decisions along the way that you have to make, and you have to make experience and knowledge, and otherwise it's just guesswork, and it will break once you upload 3 models. It's getting slow.
Yeah, like I'm not saying like for sure. I also say the same. Like it's impossible to it's not impossible, but it's very difficult to do something just purely with AI, especially if you don't know. And that's where like I see that when I do anything I do with AI around IFC, I see a lot of things that are not good, and that comes just I know that just because of experience, and you cannot replace that. So these tools are helpful, but I mean like also like programming part on the programming part like. Is that something that you also like? So the bottom line here is that people should invest in people with knowledge in IFC. Like if they want to do something like this, people who understand the schema, but also who have IT knowledge.
Yeah, I think AI is like the biggest amplifier that we have.
Yeah, for sure.
Probably in history after electricity, maybe. So if you have bad knowledge, you can
do it yourself.
Multiply it. Yeah. If you have good knowledge, you can multiply it. If you're great at something, you can really make it work with few people.
Yeah.
Much more than you had to, or you could a few years
before.
earlier.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's a great amplifier, and garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah, I completely agree. I love the mantra. I have to go back to what you mentioned. I think I want to close out with this. The thing about less information, which puts much less pressure on the designing teams. I heard this concept, like that's also a requirement that Dion has. He shared that with me. So some dots are connecting for me. I think because a lot of issues are coming just because of that. Because everyone expects the designers are going to do that. They don't expect to do that. They don't put so much importance for that. They focus on the design itself in the tool they do. And this comes just as something. So there are very few who really can do that properly. So for sure, this is an approach that has to be. The information should be put in the models from the people capable of doing that, who are closest, who have the closest knowledge about that. And for that, you have to build something like this that gives you this possibility, and also takes away the pressure from the designers. Now, what I want to know, the 20% that you still need from the designers, can you please tell me what kind of information is still critical for them to put in the models?
We identified three main areas. So one is information that drives my model. So I need, for a wall, I need width, height, length.
Quantities.
And then, yeah, that's the second part. Quantities that are derived from my model.
Okay.
So once, so this parametric designing properties we need in the model, the derived properties, because the authoring tools are best at, are closest to calculating them.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, there are ways to do this with IFC OpenShell to calculate volume and site areas, whatever. But it's much, yeah, it's not optimized for that. So we very much rely on the data that's generated by Revit or Civil 3D for these quantities. The third part is what we need are plans. So we still have to generate plans, sheets. So all the data that we need on a PDF has to be in the authoring tool.
So these are the main
Actually, there's a fourth area. Information that helps us organize our model in the authoring tool. The structure, classification, probably. But for all these, we can still define how to deal with them. So we can say, is this data originated in the authoring tool? Is the authoring tool really creating this information? Will it be sent to the database, or is it just something that we need internally to drive our model, but we don't need to really work with it in the database? Is it coming from the database? So sometimes we need something on a plan, but it's better to manage in the database in a web browser. So we can, every time we push it back to Revit if we want. So this direction. Or is it just inside the database? So we have, it goes into the authoring tool, it goes out of the authoring tool, it stays only in the authoring tool, or it's just in the database. So for each property in our requirement list, we could define this and then have a very slim way to deal with information in our authoring tools.
Yeah, that kind of makes a lot of sense. I really like this. We could have talked so much more, but it becomes already too long, and I don't want to. I want people to have the attention when they are going to listen to this, because it's tapped with a lot of information, good information. It's very also maybe over average, much more over average technically wise, but at the same time, I hope is going to inspire people to explore new ways and try to think differently when they are requiring, because unfortunately I see a lot of cases where there are a lot of clients requesting a lot of information in their models, and of course the delivery falls flat on their face because it's just very difficult and so on, you know. So I think harmonizing this, but again, like that comes with responsibility and with capability. You need experts for that. You need courage. You need, like, that direction cannot be set by somebody who doesn't have the vision. So unfortunately, we're limited based on the how many people see this value and so on, but also because there is no discussion about this. But maybe discussions like this, like we have, are going to inspire other people to look differently and think about that. Because yeah, like this, what you tell me, it sounds to me that it's a very uh, agile, very good approach of information flow on a project. I'd love to see more of that and to hear more of that. But again, like let's um, let's invest more time in understanding the schema, at least to some degree, guys. It's important, and it's very nice to see this. This is again is not the only time. So there
Yeah.
is something to this. There is something to this for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing all this futuristic open beam experience, Thomas, because it's extremely futuristic for many, many people who are going to listen to this. But at the same time, like I mentioned, hope is going to be inspiring as well. Do you
Yeah.
want to close with something? Feel free to do so.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's futuristic for us because we believe that we're reinventing the wheel in a way here. And other industries, they deal with databases and like
For a long
since
time.
half a century probably. And every time I talk to someone who's into to data engineering, they say, well, why are you making so much effort to enforce this? You can really shorten it. So we have to step back, very often look at other industries,
To learn.
re-evaluate our processes,
Hmm.
and sometimes just cut them and say,
Hmm.
well, actually, if you needed a spreadsheet and we create a spreadsheet, why don't you take our spreadsheet? Why have we
To
go
go to waste
through
more
all
time.
these processes? So
Yeah.
it's sometimes really good to step back,
Less is
get
more.
inspired by other industries,
Hmm.
and just try new ways. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't.
But dare to try. Dare to try. Unfortunately, Thomas, it's impossible to try something that you don't understand or you not even try to understand. So that's kind of the challenge. And we cover, like you mentioned, like this covers one dimension of the challenges we have with IFC. And let's say that with this, we eliminate the amount of data. The problem, there are still other many problems and challenges that people who have to export to IFC face. Like we know, I'm for sure you definitely get not properly georeferenced models and other stuff. So there is still some learning that has to be done when it comes to this, but for sure, uh, removing this dimension of the amount of data should make an impact in the quality that projects get delivered, given that you have capable people to come up with something like you do. There are also, by the way, let me also share, I'm doing some free publicity here for a tool. I'm not sure if you heard about this, but what you describe here, it sounds a lot like AnchorDB. It's a Norwegian startup who is like a database and so on. So there are already also tools like kind of do the same thing and empower. That's what they say. I didn't use it, but that's what I
Mhm.
see from their marketing. That it's like a database where you get models from Revit and IFC and you have access to data. But again, like that's a tool. It's proprietary. You have to like there are different premises, right? So yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, I can share other
Yeah,
ways that we deal here differently, but that's probably a topic for another episode.
for sure. I would love to. I would love to catch up again and go deeper in something more specific if you are allowed and you can share anything more. I would love to. So we can do something maybe next month or something like that. For
Yeah,
sure.
probably not next month, a few months down the
Okay.
road.
Okay,
So
when you're ready. When
to
you're ready,
see
you
to see
can
more
tell me.
progress. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. But for sure, I would love that. I would love that to share more if you can do that, for sure. Thank you so much for joining me. It was amazing. I hope this is going to inspire more than scare people.
Hopefully, yeah.